I know I've spoken to you about this a little, how like we're sharing so much and you're sharing so much, but we're a little bit leaving out part of it that is not intentional, like leaving it out, like, you obviously can't get to everything, but in a way of like leaving it out and then not giving people the full picture or um the full scope of what it took to get to where you are, get to where I am, to get to where we are together. And we could talk about femininity, masculinity, and and self energy and IFS and all the elements and all the things that went into our healing, which are like massive and real and true and really part of it. But also like how psychedelics played a huge role as well. And how if people aren't aware of that, they're not, they obviously, everyone could choose what to do and what they're comfortable with, but at least let people know what it took for us to get here so that they have the full picture and, you know, know what it took. And everyone's path isn't going to be the same, but a lot of marriages are struggling and ours was not in a good place. And we almost got divorced and we're in an incredible place. And it feels like a little bit of a responsibility to share everything it took to get there, you know? Um, so yeah, I wanted to ask you about that today.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love the prompt, and I do agree with you. It's important to speak about, and that, yeah, that people can sometimes get a false impression or think they have all the ingredients and are wondering why, like, their cake isn't rising. You know, they
Mm,
got put all their
love
ingredients in, and
that.
it's like
Mm.
the cake flops, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot to put the baking soda in."
Mm,
And it's like, but I had everything else, and the baking soda is like the smallest amount of the thing that needs to be added, and yet somehow that's what allows a cake to be a cake, So to like do a cooking show and pull
mm,
out all the ingredients and then like, withhold the secret ingredient that's gonna make the cake the ultimate cake and the
mhm,
most delicious cake or even just a cake
mm,
is like, in a way, you can say to be misleading or it's just like unfair and it disadvantages people. And I do agree with that.
mhm.
I do agree with that concept, that idea. Yeah.
I love that visual, that like muscle. It's so good.
There isn't, I don't think,
Mm,
enough time to treat the subject, but the truth is no amount of time
mm,
would do it justice. So, we could begin the conversation, but there's these caveats that are coming up. It's like, as you alluded to, you can't always provide the whole picture in every instance. It's like you try to teach polarity, and it's like, oh, but don't forget about inner child work. You're teaching about inner child work. You're like, don't forget about sex. You're teaching about sex. It's like, don't forget about nervous system regulation. And it's like
somatics.
somatics, and they're all important, and they're all what I call layers. So, but one could say that there's a big difference between, let's say, like vanilla extract in a chocolate cake and baking soda. There are certain
Mm,
ingredients that really help everything else to congeal. For example, sex might be one of those ingredients, maybe you say more than, um, I don't know necessarily, or, it really depends. And everything's interconnected with everything else. And it's all about the foundation for safety. But like, say, communication,
mm,
right? It's like you go to a therapist for years about communication, but did they once ask, like, how's your actual sex life? And maybe start there. And then, yeah, maybe you don't have the perfect communication, but bodies communicating is a whole nother layer of communication. And maybe words right now is not the exact specific thing that's going to get you to where you need to go. So, though you can never always account for every single thing, and so even though you can't always account for everything, certain things do weigh more than other things. right? Like, for example, prayer, as powerful and as necessary as prayer is to our lives, might not be, at least in my journey, in my story, as much of an active ingredient as psychedelics.
Mm.
But then you zoom out and be like, well, what is prayer? You
Mm.
know, what really is prayer?
Or what really
And,
is psychedelics?
and what really is psychedelics? And what you might come to actually is that there really is no difference.
Mm.
That there really is no difference. That if we're doing anything that is of value, then what it's really doing is connecting us to ourselves. So therapy, what's therapy? What's this path through the forest, that path through the forest? No, but what really is therapy fundamentally? It's connecting with self. It's self-intimacy. What is prayer? Self-intimacy. Right? You have to get in touch with your desires. You have to get in touch with your desires. Self-intimacy. What is psychedelics?
Self-intimacy.
How did you know? You got it right. You win a big, beautiful teddy bear.
Mm-mm. Yay.
Yeah. Psychedelics is self-intimacy. So, there are a million doors or doorways into the same palace, right? The palace is the grand expanse of human consciousness. It's the non-duality, right? That our souls are really one, that we're all interconnected. It's not even interconnected, but we all are that universal, infinite, divine field of consciousness. It's only that our bodies act as little local antennas or receptors or prisms for one aspect of that infinite wavelength. It's like you shared with me an Instagram reel recently where the person was describing how like a God, right, or the all was bored of infinity
Mm.
and so created finitude to break up the monotony of
Mm.
just endless divine light,
Mm.
right? The truth is that the endless divine light is still endless divine light, but by breaking it up into what is experienced as localized and temporary, it gives the infinity like an experiencer, a body, friction,
Mm.
pleasure,
Mm.
an infinite light. There's the pleasure pales in comparison to finitude interacting with infinity. So I don't intend in the very short window we have here to actually get into the full scope of like, whatever full scope. There's no full scope, but like really getting into the depth of my perspective on psychedelics. Although I think I kind of just laid it out pretty well
Mm.
right there. Um, but but I think the question itself and looking at the question and even looking at the caveats that come up are already themselves um, illustrative. They already point out some things um, that can be insightful.
Yeah.
So So yeah, but generally speaking, I see psychedelics and plant medicines as a tool um, to help the human species evolve, and I believe that God is infinitely intentional, and that every single thing that is in this universe, in this world, is provided for our benefit. We are the center of the cosmos, and that everything that exists in the cosmos is created for the benefit of humanity, and that different teachings, different tools, different even compounds or resources, natural or otherwise, are revealed to humanity at exactly the right time when they're supposed to be revealed for us to avail ourselves of them for our own becoming. You could call it becoming healing. You can call it becoming evolution. You can call it becoming growing, expanding, but fundamentally, it's it basically means revealing the truth of who we are, revealing our true nature. And to me, that's what the Torah is. Right? The Torah is not a book, but one aspect of the totality of Torah is like specific words written in a specific order, revealed in a specific way. That's literally printed in a book and that you could take off the shelf and open up and read with your eyes and absorb. But all of those words are just a pointer, like a very diminutive, very like stripped down, most like concrete version of like a much more vast or infinite spiritual reality. And so the Torah isn't that reality. The Torah is pointing to that reality.
Mm.
Reality is reality. God is reality. The Torah and the words in Torah are just pointing us through consciousness, right? Specific words, they're containers through which we can have a finite perception, because it's the finitude that gives God the ultimate pleasure. But the finitude is there to point us to the infinity. It's not for us to get stuck on the finiteness of the words or the rituals or the laws. Those are all there to help us, like it's like a code to access this higher, deeper spiritual, infinite reality. So I see psychedelics as a tool to access the same reality and the same truths that the Torah or any wisdom that's pointing to reality is trying to do. And, we can go into how does it do that, the mechanism, how do you describe what that experience is like? But one thing I could say as an introduction is that psychedelics are, as the word means, it means to manifest the mind, to essentially to reveal the mind, to make the mind known. So what are psychedelics? Well, what is consciousness? Psychedelics are a lubricant for consciousness. They're an accelerant for consciousness. So you say, well, what are psychedelics? Well, they aren't any one thing. Just as consciousness isn't any one thing. Human consciousness, which is God consciousness, is infinite. So what are psychedelics? They're everything. What are psychedelics? They are the experience of psychedelics, or the uses for psychedelics, or the purpose for psychedelics are as vast as human consciousness. What's the purpose of human consciousness? How vast or how specific or non-specific is human consciousess? That's how vast and specific and non-specific psychedelics are. Because psychedelics aren't really a thing. They, like when you ingest the psychedelic, it's not a thing. Yeah, there are chemical properties. There's physical component. There's like there's like a skin, right? There's like a clothing to the deeper energy and medicine. But what it really is just a vehicle. It's an accelerant to reveal consciousness. So the medicine, when you ingest it, doesn't really put anything in your mind. It doesn't put consciousness in your mind. It just reveals consciousness. Now, different medicines have different effects on the revelation of that. The revelation of that consciousness because there are infinite layers to consciousness. So there might be like a more masculine component to one's consciousness or a more feminine component to one's consciousness. And people will talk about medicines like there's the grandmother and the grandfather. And it's like, yeah, like the affect or like the felt sense, right? The experience has like a color or a texture or a context that feels more feminine or more masculine. But that's like saying the different entrances to the palace, right? We're all trying to get into the palace. Palace is to human consciousness, which means our soul, which means God. Now, this medicine might bring you through a door that you have to lower your head through, right? Humble yourself and go through that door, and that's how you enter into the palace. This entrance might be very, very wide and expansive, and the only way to get through it is to believe that you're deserving enough to walk through that gate, right? In one entrance, it's going to be very, very, very dark and feel like a tunnel and feel like you're being squeezed and dying through a birth canal only to be birthed. And the other entrance is going to be filled with beautiful light and warm energy and sexuality and vitality, right? So it's all there to point us to the same thing. Just as really, fundamentally, all religions and all spiritual paths ultimately are trying to point everyone to the same thing. Even though the means and methods might be different, ultimately, I believe, but all the paths, again, definitely different philosophies, even contradicting philosophies, even philosophies that on the surface are antithetical fundamentally, right? One promotes asceticism to like leave the physical world, the material world, and become an ascetic and divorce oneself from materiality. And the other one says, no, the only way to actually reach the divine is through the material universe, through the finitude, through performing very specific acts in very specific ways, limited and bound to specific times and places. Right? Oh, those on the surface, those are fundamentally incompatible. In fact, they're antithetical. But if you really look deeper and you scratch beneath the surface, what I think you find fundamentally is that everyone essentially is trying to enter into true reality. Everyone is trying to enter into a direct experiential relationship with actual reality. And for some, it's whirling dervishes. They spin and spin and spin, and through their spinning, they reach states of consciousness, elevated, expanded states of consciousness beyond their physical form. And for others, it's praying ecstatically through song and dance. For others, it's through praying in stillness, right? The one who's doing it in stillness in a monastery is no different in a way, right? In the external, of course, it looks very different than the whirling dervishes or the people who are jumping up and down in ecstatic prayer. But fundamentally, what they're both trying to reach is the same thing. They're both trying to access divinity within.
Mm.
And so that to me, psychedelics is an extremely potent and timely for our generation, because we don't have time to waste, to help people to actually basically meet their soul, meet God, which is where all healing and evolution comes from. It doesn't come from repressing certain chemicals or encouraging, or slowing down the uptake of certain chemicals so that the brain can experience those chemicals for longer or for more, or to put people through behavioral programs. The reason why everyone has disease and mental illness is because fundamentally it's because of a disconnection with self. And the way to heal is to reconnect a person to themselves. Well, I'm already connected with myself. Yeah, but your self is infinite. There's always layers you can go deeper into connection with self, which will allow you to penetrate the universe around you deeper. The deeper you are connected to self, the deeper your roots go in self, meaning in the divine, the further your branches get to reach and the more fruit you get to give to this universe. We see it with trees. We see it in nature. It's a fundamental principle. So to me, psychedelics are an ally, an aid in helping humans to access their deepest and highest truth, and to help to highlight the blockages that are in the way of that connection to self, that self-intimacy. And then we still got to do the work.
Mm.
The work never goes away. Psychedelics don't remove the work. All they do is actually give you work, because now you see very clearly. Most people are walking through life saying, I don't know what my problem is. I don't know where my blockages are. I'm stuck. Or do I even have a blockage? They don't even have clarity on, is there even a blockage? And yet they're walking through life and they're harming themselves every second and harming others every second, completely oblivious to the fact they're basically sleepwalking through life.
Mm.
And the psychedelics reconnect us to our fundamental self, which gives us awareness, awakeness, aliveness, alertness, consciousness, where we're actually able to look truth, reality in the eye, make eye contact with it, which always starts by making eye contact with our soul, because that is the underlying truth of all of reality. And from that place, everything in the outer world can shift. And we came here to make a difference. But if our energy is blocked, if we don't trust ourselves, if we can't see ourselves, then we cannot actually make an impact. We cannot penetrate, and we cannot plant our seeds in the ground to actually give birth to new life and make beautiful things grow in this world. So just like by way of introduction, that's like,
Mm.
generally how I think about psychedelics.
So good. I love that you went to the like baking the cake thing right away, because as you were talking, I was seeing how that was connected to so much. Um, and one of the things was like you can talk about, you could study a recipe, right? And you could talk about it and you could explore it and you could do deep inner work to like imagine what it tastes like and like think about the chocolate cake and understand it and describe it and try and tap into what that is. Or you could just like bake it and eat it and like have an actual interaction with it that is in your body. The cake is going in your body. And now instead of all of this intellectual understanding and studying of what it means to make a cake and what it, is like, you just ate it. And like, it's just, and I was thinking about, how that connects to psychedelics and how instead of all of the therapy, not instead, like first, all of the therapy that everyone's working so hard. Everyone's working so hard to heal and to understand. And their weekly therapy sessions or their twice a week therapy sessions or their retreats that are going even longer and deeper to like heal or understand or go inside. And like, it's like you could just eat it, and like it's not like, oh, then all the work goes away, but it's like a much more, what's the word? It's a much more like actual tangible interaction with the healing. And yeah, and like even when you were describing the Torah also, I was connecting that to like being a recipe book. And it's like, yes, it's a recipe book, but like, don't forget the main thing is the cake. Like you don't get too stuck on like recipes. The main thing is like to experience what the recipes want you to experience,
Mm.
And yeah, so yeah, there's so many levels and such a vast topic. So it's such a simple topic on one hand, and it's so vast, and you could get to the most details of what are the different medicines, and or what do you suggest someone's path would be, or all of that. But I think for today, and I think we should definitely have part two, and even thinking of like opening up questions to people to give to us to answer. But I guess my question for you and is your first psychedelic experience, or I won't say psychedelic experience because that's maybe your first psychedelic experience was when you started meditating or when you started learning Chassidus, but your first actual ingestion of a psychedelic plant medicine was when we were separated. Um, what was it, like 5 years ago? And I would love if you could share how that helped you. You were doing at that point, you've been in a lot of therapy. I'm not sure if you were already doing also EMDR. Like you were already, I think at that point, immersed in the healing world for yourself. And then you had your first psychedelic journey. And my question, I guess, is how would you say that impacted you? How would you say, what was the experience of that coming from all the work you did before? How would you describe it a little? And how do you feel like it had like is there a before and after? How do you feel like it had an impact on being able to keep our marriage together? And there's a lot of questions. Would it have been possible without it? And how does it differ from all of the healing work that you were doing? And how do you feel about it? And just tell me about it.
Yeah, I think this definitely deserves its own episode or two. So I'm not going to get into the full depth and breadth of it, but I'll answer some of that. I'll answer the biggest question first, which is, do I think I would have been able to save my marriage, which is really a way of saying is really save myself without it. But we could focus on the marriage because save myself, I would have had the rest of the runway of my life to save it. But the marriage had a shorter runway. So the answer is no. I don't believe that I would have been able to show up in the way that I did and make as radical of an energetic shift as I had without mushrooms. Without mushrooms and without MDMA. My first journey was with mushrooms. And to answer your question about what was the experience how did it create a shift? Like, what was it? I forget the way you formulated the question, but there's so many different ways to say it, and I can wax poetic and philosophical on it. But one of the ways to say it, to sort of encapsulate at least one aspect and one very, very powerful aspect of that experience was that in that journey, I was able to see you as you.
Mm.
I was able to see you as a human being independent of me. I was able to see you not through the lens of my ego. I was able to see you not through the lens of my self protection, which is what the ego is. So when the mushrooms softened my ego, it brought down the lenses that I was looking through, which the lens I was looking through was I was looking through my own lens. I was looking through my own fears and my own insecurities, which forced me to see you in a certain way to protect myself. But the moment that those defenses came down, the moment that my ego was softened and I was in a blindfold on 6.5 grams of mushrooms in my bed at the apartment that I was renting, with the therapist and her partner, I was able to just see you and the who you are as a person. And then it became crystal clear to me the pain that I was inflicting upon you. Because until I saw you as a separate person, the enmeshment was such that I couldn't even see how what I was doing was hurting you. Now, obviously, I had seen on different levels and I had written apology letters or this and that. Like, there were parts of me that got it. But
Mhm.
until that point on that mushroom journey, I had never seen it as definitively and as crystal clear and as undeniable as I was seeing it. And I was just crying these soft tears because I was seeing you and I was feeling such compassion, so much compassion for you and what you were enduring. I saw you as a little girl. I saw you as this like beautiful, innocent little girl who was just like, why can't you just be soft with me? Why can't you just be loving? Why can't you just see me? I'm right here. I'm right here. There's so much harshness coming through in so many different ways. And I just remember crying and crying and just like in soft, beautiful, tender tears. And that was in itself like that one visual, which may have only taken up, by the way, about 30 seconds in this mushroom journey of 5, 6 hours, was itself absolutely and totally life changing.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I'm getting emotional just hearing you say it, and I know I felt a massive, massive shift from you right after that first journey. Um, yeah, where it's really hard to see someone else. It's really hard to, I mean, you know, what is ego? People say Yetzer Hara, like what are the two forces inside of us? There's like God and there's our ego, which is, it's not bad, but it's not always, it, I don't know. I don't want to say it could get out of hand, but like it's something that while that is what the ego is what makes this whole world possible. This whole, you were referencing before, this whole finite world. What makes it possible? What makes God have this whole idea of, instead of just this infinite, glorious, floating, majestic, blissful universe of just complete peace and harmony, he created this world where there is separateness. And the only way we experience separateness is because we have egos. So if we didn't have an ego, then we would just all know that we were one God, and then the simulation wouldn't work. So, so our ego is, a huge player in this world. But our work is to balance our ego and our godly soul. And it's very hard to see, to not wear the ego glasses, to see something clearly outside of our ego filter. And I think that sometimes we get like glimpses, from the side, we kind of can do work where like the ego is a steps aside for a bit, or we see around it. But like that softening that you described, where just the ego is just is not in that protective mode or fear mode, or me isn't there so strong, and you're just, and without the mushrooms, it might be like if you were to see how much you're hurting your wife, it's too hard. It's too painful. It's too painful to be like, I am hurting this person. Like, your ego is like, no, I need to protect you. I need to protect you from feeling horrible or for feeling like a failure, for feeling this. I won't let you see it fully. And on the mushrooms, because you tap into a place of like such safety and godliness and wholeness, you're like, your ego just can like lay kepi and just like, you're okay. And then you could just see something so clearly and it's not as scary, it's not as painful, and you could just cry and you're okay. There's self-love for Saadya too. You're not getting washed away and like, I'm hurting my wife, and then like tripping about that and getting, like so tripped up. Then you also can't even help that. But you're just like, there's softness and tenderness. And then you're just allowed to see how you might be hurting someone, and just in such a beautiful way. And yeah, it's like something that, ingesting this mushroom, mushrooms allows for that softening where without it, it's really, really, really hard to get there. Like, it's really like, and that's why I opened up by saying, like, it's almost not fair to expect somebody to have this level of compassion for their spouse or themselves and their spouse without it. Not that it's not possible, but it's almost like it's not fair to at least not let people know that this helps, and this is what helped us, and this is what helped you. And yeah, I even got emotional while you were saying it out, and I remember you sharing this with me after. And I know so much more came up on that journey, but I remember like just being like feeling so seen and so relieved and just so like safe. Also, like, wow, like you just like you care about me, you see me, you just like, we're not in this war of like ego to ego. There's just like space for love. And like, I'm like having this like visual of like a marathon, and everybody's running this marathon, and this guy comes to join the marathon all excited and like earnest and like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get there, and like nobody told him that they're all wearing these certain shoes that helps you go, and he just has the wrong shoes, and it's like he's going and everyone's going faster and everyone's getting there, and he's like feeling so horrible about himself, and it's like, poor guy didn't know that there's these shoes that like this work with this ground that help you go 10 times faster. And like, if he knew about it, he might choose not to wear them, but then at least he would just have more grace and compassion and be like, yeah, it's going to take me longer. I'm making this choice of like not doing this. It doesn't feel aligned for me. I don't feel like I want to wear those shoes. But at least know that the reason some of the people you are looking at ahead of you are where they are is because they have this booster shoe. They have this booster medicine. They have this booster therapy. And that's how we were able to do what we were able to do. And like you said, there's still the work. Still the work. But
Still got to run.
yeah, still have to run. The shoes aren't,
They drop you
electric.
off beyond the finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still have to run with them, but make it a lot easier, And yeah, it's like to bring back to the cake. You still have to make the cake, but you have the recipe, or one is you're just shooting in the dark and just trying out different things and seeing how you make the cake. And one is you have the recipe. You still got to do it, but much easier when you know what the ingredients are, or you have a download of how to make it. And yeah.
Yeah. Really like your example of the marathon. And I actually had that same muscle in my mind, that same analogy earlier in this conversation. And I was thinking about people running in a marathon, but not performance enhancing shoes, but
Mhm.
performance enhancing drugs.
Mm.
And it's like, they have rules against what they call doping, right? To take
Steroids.
Steroids, thank you, in these different sports. And the issue is not taking performance enhancing drugs. The issue is when one person
Mm.
has that as an option, right? And avails themselves of that option, and that basically advantages them to the disadvantage of everyone else who's competing. Now, one could say, well, then, like, if the point is to run and to run at your best, why not use every available tool to run at your best and just make those tools available to everyone? And you could say, well, some people might be allergic to specific medicines or counter, right? Like for this person, they can't take it because it has a negative side effect. So, but this person can take it and it has no negative side effects, or the positive effect of being able to run faster outweighs the negative side effect for them. So what they do is they just baseline take it away. But if you really think about it, these sports and what sports are trying to do, it's like to bring out the maximum capacity of the human um, uh, strength and physical prowess, right? That's the whole thing. Then why would one not avail themselves of every single possible, every single thing that could help to accelerate or enhance their physical prowess to make them a better basketball player or a better marathon runner and so on? And actually, that is what people do. They have trainers that they pay an inordinate amount of money, right? Shoes, the science behind shoes, and the clothing that they wear, and the amount of sleep that they get, and their blood sugar content, right? There's like a million data points that go into how can I be the most efficient physical body to compete at the highest possible level and to outrun, outpace, outplay my opponents so that I can win. They already are doing all of that. There's this one category called drugs, doping oneself. And it's like, that's a category that we don't accept. And there are like massive societal taboos around drugs. And without going into the history of that and the social context and the conditioning, it's real and it's important. And it's a good thing to explore just as a critical thinker, to look at how society interprets so many different things that we're interpreting as just as a given, as a fact, or as science, or as like is sacrosanct, right? It's like a religious value and it's not to be questioned. It's from the Torah, right? So it's really valuable to have that conversation, and maybe we should. But putting that conversation aside for a moment, if a person, if the drugs should be on the table just like any other performance enhancing thing, like drinking electrolytes, right? But again, the issue is not that if everyone were to take them, everyone would have the same advantage. The issue is some will take advantage of it, some can't take advantage of it. They don't say this, and I'm not saying this is their actual thinking or this is historically where the ban has come from. But ostensibly, in principle, there should be no issue. If everyone could have access to those drugs, it's like everyone could have access to electrolytes and sleep and training and trainers and the best sweat wicking clothing and the best sleep monitoring and diet monitoring and sugar levels and whatever, and there's hundreds and hundreds of data points and things that people do to make themselves powerful enough to win, then this should be included in it as well. This should be included in it as well. So for the person, and back to the way that you gave the example, running a marathon, and there's these sneakers, but let's just say it's these performance enhancing drugs, and they're saying, no, you know what, it doesn't feel aligned for me to take these drugs. I would really encourage and invite that person to actually take a really close look, like a very close and compassionate look at why they would limit themselves. If there is a tool that's available to help them to get to where they want to go faster or more effectively, why wouldn't they take it? Now, that's an open-ended exploration for anybody who wants to take a look at themselves and to understand themselves better. But I could say from experience, the one thing that I see come up over and over and over again, and I know that I had this feeling towards drugs, not necessarily psychedelics, like intentional use of psychedelics for healing, right? Not psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, but I had a massive aversion to drugs, and I judged people who did drugs, like very strongly for many, many, many years. So what I see come up for a lot of people is a judgment that getting help is a shortcut. And a shortcut in their mind is a pejorative. But what's interesting is they apply that selectively. They apply it to things that their mind already has a bias against. So it's confirmation bias. So they'll say drugs. Oh, look at people, they're doing drugs and they're skipping the steps. They're taking a shortcut. And it's like anyone who says that people who are taking psychedelics in the framework of healing is taking a shortcut, like in the sense that they're thinking about a shortcut in the pejorative sense, like it's the easier route. they're wrong. They're just factually wrong. It's just not the case at all. In fact, it's quite the contrary. So without getting into the specifics of what do they mean by shortcut and how is it actually a shortcut, right? Because there is an aspect to it that's a shortcut, but there's the short long way and the long short way, right? The shortcut might be that it's harder, quicker. That doing something, getting to the harder thing quicker is a shortcut. Well, that doesn't sound like a shortcut. That seems like it's much harder. Yeah, the experience is harder, but it gets you there faster because you're going to the hard thing sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so simple. People throw around words, shortcut. It's not a shortcut. It's hard. It's not hard. It's so much more nuanced.
Escape.
It's so much more nuanced than that. So the idea that I'm going to take a quote unquote shortcut, it's selective, because for the people who tell me that, be like, Chassidus. What is Chassidus? Isn't Chassidus a shortcut? Right? Chassidus came to the world to help people. It's a tool. Chassidus is a tool to help people. And it came in a very specific time and in a very specific place when we were desperate, actually dying, literally dying for this tool. And it was medicine. But was it, so you don't believe in aids? You don't believe in allies? You don't believe in availing yourself of things that could support you along your journey? Water is aiding and abetting you to your day. Well, that's a shortcut. If I drink water, it's going to be so much easier for me to get through my day if I hydrate. If I exercise every morning, I'm taking a shortcut. So if you really strip it down and go way, way back, if a person's really honest and willing to explore it or do some IFS, some parts work around this and really look inside it, and with genuine curiosity means without fear, not having fear, but with openness to what they might discover and find. I think for many, many people, there's basically this lack of real compassion, and they actually aren't really being kind to themselves. This thing is, it's not aligned for me. So what you're saying is getting support is not aligned for you. Yeah, I'm not going to learn Chassidus because Chassidus takes me into the depths of God. And you know what? Torah, people will say, Torah is, Shemayim HaShemayim LaHashem Ba'aretz Livnei Adam. Like the heavens, the celestial worlds, the spiritual realms are for God. And the earth is for human beings. But Chassidus is coming to reveal what's behind the curtain. So people were like, God forbid do you ever reveal what's behind the curtain. Oh, that's going to be, you're going to try to take a shortcut. No, you have to hustle. You have to struggle. You have to bang your head against the wall and literally crack your head open to try to see and feel God in your life. That's the way to do it. But why do you have that belief in your system that the way to do it is to crack your head? Why can't the way to do it be with lying down with softness and somebody stroking your face and saying, my love, I see you. You're holy and you're pure. And you're just an actual chelik elokam mimamash. You're an actual literal part of God. Why does it have to be so difficult? It's because of a fundamental belief. Explore that belief. Where did you learn that belief? And why are you holding on so tightly to that belief? So thanks for these questions, Munchkin. You're getting my juices flowing, and there's so much here. And again, because psychedelics are just really the expansive human consciousness, what we're talking about is not psychedelics. We're talking about consciousness. What we're talking about is not about a mushroom, and it's not about MDMA. We're talking about human consciousness. And human consciousness, the power of human consciousness is that it has choice to tap into this frequency or that frequency. Right. I could be the hater on shortcuts, or I could be the lover on quote unquote shortcuts. I could take a shortcut and make it deep and meaningful and anything but a shortcut. I could take something that's hard and turn it into a shorter path. It's all consciousness.
Well, I love what you're saying. And it's like, it really, kind of begs the question of like, what's wrong with the shortcut? Like if you're on a walk and it takes you an hour to get to your friend's house and someone's like, oh, by the way, if you make a right here and walk through this field, it'll take you 30 minutes. Should someone have resistance to that? Like, oh, no, that's a shortcut. I'm used to going and like, what is objectively wrong with a shortcut? What is what's wrong with a shortcut? Like,
well, it really depends what a person's goal is. And if the goal is to get to the person's house, then there shouldn't be anything wrong with the shortcut. But if your goal is to
get your steps in,
then you might have an issue with the shortcut.
Right, so.
If your goal is to take a scenic route and unwind, right, and be in nature, then taking a shortcut is a problem.
And if your goal is to be a martyr also, then taking a shortcut would be in direct conflict with
Yes.
some sort of inner belief that you might not even be aware of,
Mhm.
or if your goal is to actually never really get there, which
Mhm.
perhaps is
Mm.
everybody's subconscious goal, quote unquote, then this is really, but that's what I'm saying. It's so great that you're saying it because it begs a person to kind of explore. Wait, oh yeah, I don't want to do that to shortcut. Okay, wow, that's really interesting. Let's explore what your relationship is to shortcuts and why you feel like it might be a bad thing or why you feel like you might want to take it. And it might be totally valid and aligned for you not to take shortcuts right now, but let's understand why and what's really behind it. And yeah, like as you're talking also, I was saying like, you know, yeah, like what does a shortcut mean? Or like even like biblically, like kfitzas haderech, and right, like what is that? And like what is our role in this generation of bringing Mashiach? And what is it's basically what I kind of was saying energetically is like if you don't take the quote unquote shortcut, even though I don't even think it's really a shortcut, right? Like it's actually the path of our generation, you know, just like Wi-Fi is a shortcut, right? Calling someone in Australia, it's a shortcut. You're supposed to have to go on a boat and a plane. No, it's like we're in the era of, I wouldn't use the word shortcut, but because we're using it here, we're in the era of shortcuts. It's shortcut era. Okay. Like just get on board because if you don't take this shortcut, then you're passing this work on to your future lifetime. Like, I don't think that the work can be done in this lifetime without the shortcut. So you're basically kind of saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'll save it to the next manifestation of my soul, wherever my soul goes in the next body, they'll deal with this. I don't want to deal with this responsibility of healing. So my excuse is, I don't want to take shortcuts. Like, it's it's something to explore, and as you were talking also, I'm like, well, like you said, I mean, you said it, but like everything's can be a shortcut, right? Water, I was thinking about breath work. Lots of people who have aversion or judgment or stories about psychedelics, which I think is a lot less, lately, but still very much there. We'll do breath work and we'll do other things that are also shortcuts. They're also getting you somewhere faster. Sometimes someone could have a psychedelic experience on breath work. So what is it? It's just the mushroom that's the problem, or it's because um, meditation could be a shortcut, like you said, Hasidus could be a shortcut. I mean, there's so many definitions of shortcuts. So yeah, it's really interesting to explore. Yeah, and like kind of full circle. And I asked you that question, and I kind of knew the answer, and I knew the answer for myself because of the massive shift I saw in you after your first journey. But I don't think we would be together right now, married, happily married, having had a fourth child, and doing everything we do together. If you had not done that mushroom journey and taken that shortcut, and what would be the value that you can say Saadya doesn't take shortcuts, and that's the end goal in and of itself. That's the what do you call it? That's the word. That's the mission. Um, and Yeah. It's like aligned with what you were saying of like believing that we're not really that godly. Let's leave it to let's leave it to somebody else to be that godly. Let's leave it to Hashem to make change. I'm just a simple human. I'm just gonna monotonously go through this world as a victim because I can't actually make change. So I don't take shortcuts and I don't take this and I don't do that. Because on some belief, I am not worthy to be like God. Because if you really truly felt you were worthy to be like Hashem, which is basically what we're supposed to be doing, what is all of the things we do, what are all the mitzvahs for to align us with God frequency. So if you don't believe that you have this like false humility and sort of like this, false, story of like, I'm just a simple person. Like I'm not really meant for this magnificent godliness, or it's just really a lot of fear. Also, just fear of what that would mean to take up that much space, or to have that much belief in myself, or believe that I can change the world and I could blaze my own path. Like, what does that mean? All the fear that we have around our bigness and our power. And there's lots of excuses why we wouldn't do it. Which my intention for this conversation is not to convince anybody to do anything that doesn't feel aligned for them. And I would never tell anybody if they had this feeling of, I don't want to do psychedelics, be like, just swallow the pill. Like, that's not the point. But the point is to, as everything, I mean, the purpose of everything we do and the conversations we have is to just bring awareness, because how can you make choices if you don't even have all the information? And I think there are lots of people who are having conversations about why not to do psychedelics, and rabbis and shuls and different things that I've heard about be like, why psychedelics are not good for you. And listen to that if you want to. But I feel like I want to share from us why we feel like they can be good for you, and what the advantage is to them. And while you still get to make your own choice, but with just information and not an episode all about how magnificent it is that we went from you totally not being able to hold space for me, or I wasn't able to bring any of my pain to you, to being in this incredible relationship right now where I can bring all of my parts to you, and not mention that mushrooms and MDMA and ayahuasca had a big role in where we are now. Because it's just not fair. It's not telling people about the steroids we're taking, quote unquote, or the shoes we have. And yeah, it just feels like a responsibility to not be honest as if we have been dishonest, but to be transparent about our journey and how it helped us. And also just how grateful personally I am to the fact that I live in a time where this is available. Because if we were going through what we were going through, well, maybe if we're going through what we're going through, in the 60s and whatever. But if we were going through at a time where psychedelics were not available, we would have to wait till this lifetime. And actually, we probably did. Our souls probably did go through that. And they're so freaking grateful that they got to manifest again in 2020, 2026, where this time we get to take the medicine that wasn't available to us. And last time we had to get divorced, and we had to suffer, and we had to break up our family, and our kids suffer. And this time we get to come back around and say hell yes, and lift our hands up and say, I am worthy for the healing. And yeah, what an honor.
Beautiful, baby. Thank you. Yeah, and what you said about our marriage had it not been for mushrooms, I say that with certainty. As much certainty as anyone can have about anything. So call it 99.99999% certainty that had it not been for mushrooms, I would not still be married today, not to you. And yeah, I'm also extremely grateful to these medicines and to the people who pioneered and had enough self-trust to ingest themselves, do the work themselves, and to then share that MS, that truth and that love and compassion with others. And yeah, I'm happy we're here to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And this really is just like the tip of the iceberg. I love your desire to share the full radical truth, the full context, and not leave people with all the ingredients for the cake, except for like the active ingredient that allows the cake to actually rise and come out as a cake that's edible and delicious and
fluffy.
fluffaluffus. Yeah, baby.